by bringing our hands together and just beginning to set the intention. Setting the intention to learn, to explore, to be curious. And just taking a few breaths, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Do that 2 more times. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling. 1 more time. Inhaling and exhaling. And let's begin our practice today with 3 ohms. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling. So we'll start with our discussion, and then we will move on to a gentle meditation. You can remain seated. I have some handouts for you, which like half of you are yoga teachers, so you'll know, and half of you practice yoga all the time, so you know it. But they're just little guides, because sometimes we forget what we can do to help restore ourselves. On Monday, I went and saw a hypnotherapist, and he was just like, you probably already know this. And I'm like, I've been teaching the 4 Noble Truths for the last 4 weeks. You know, we do know it, but it's a practice. It's something that we continue to do. It's not perfect, right? Otherwise, we would be bodhisattvas, right? Or maybe you are a bodhisattva. I don't know. Maybe you've come back to show us the way. But bodhisattva, basically, it's someone who's ascended beyond, you know, where we are. And there's 2 types. There's the type that ascend into nirvana and never return, and then there's the type that choose to be reborn again and again in order to show other people the path and the way. So our talk tonight, I'm going to be coming from a secular point of view, because I really believe that yoga philosophy, as well as a lot of Eastern philosophy, can be really applied to any belief system. There's wisdom in it. So, you know, this isn't trying to like convert. This is just like, let's have a conversation and see what comes up. So Dharma really means natural law. That's what Dharma means. And in Buddhism, Dharma is also often talked about as the teachings of the Buddha. But also in Buddhism, Dharma is basically everything. It's everything and not anything. It's continuation and discontinuation. It's stopping and going. So pretty much everything is Dharma, right? So we're going to start with the 4 Noble Truths. And we discussed this over the past. And basically the first Noble Truth is life is suffering. So the story all begins with Prince Siddhartha being basically protected from everything, and his father not wanting him to see any suffering. And as we know, in life, that doesn't happen. You know, I remember when I was a child, I had a pet steer, because everyone does, right? That's the type of cow. And I bottle fed him, you know, and he would follow me around the yard like a dog. And one day, we went to the butcher's and picked up a bunch of beef. I was like 3 years old, and I started crying, and I said, Mom, Dad, put Mac back together again. And they said they couldn't. And that was when I learned that life was suffering, right? And it is. There's a life cycle. And there's a point where everybody goes through this, and sometimes as parents, you'll, like, the goldfish that just lives 10 years, right? Like, it's replacing that goldfish with another goldfish. You know, and then when the goldfish finally, you can't find one exactly like it, oh, he decided he wanted to swim away. You know, there's this protection. And so Siddhartha's father had that same desire to protect his son from suffering. But eventually Siddhartha wanted to go out into the world, and by that point he was already an adult man, and he had just been married. And his father cleared the way where he was not to come across the path of anyone who was ailing or dead or, otherwise compromised according to the king's view. And of course that didn't work because people come in a variety of states. And he saw an old woman and he didn't know what that was. And so his faithful servant explained that was old age and everyone gets old. And he was so upset he went back to the castle or palace, and then he decided he wanted to go again. And the next time he went out, he saw a man that was sickly and pallid. And I might be getting wrong with the order. And he asked what that was, and his faithful servant said, "That's illness." And then he was upset again, went back to the palace, like all princes do. And then he wanted to go out again, and that time he saw a dead man. And he said, "What is this? That looks like a man that also looks like a log." Right? So that's a pretty sheltered existence, and most of us, have some type of experience that's more like Mac, right? The story of my steer, than like never seeing any illness or discomfort. So this is what started the whole path. This is what started him to want to seek beyond suffering. So in this ideology, it's a place beyond the gods and the goddesses, beyond suffering and torment and torture, beyond discipline and reward. It's a space of just, you can contact it, you can be connected to samadhi or nirvana just by living a life of balance. And so the second noble truth is suffering is caused by attachment, and we've all been attached to things and all have had some type of suffering. Some people are still suffering over a long-lost love, right? The one that got away, even though they've been married for like 40 years. They still talk about that guy or that girl from high school. Right? Suffering is released by non-attachment. So the opposite of suffering, the opposite of attachment isn't like not caring and just being apathetic and feeling like, well, nothing matters, it all ends anyway. It's understanding that everything is temporary, and so every moment is sacred, right? So when we're going through something horrible, that moment has value, but the great thing about that moment is it passes, right? And we don't have to travel back 45 years to high school to relive that moment, but as humans, we constantly want to grasp back in the past to inform our future, which causes suffering, right? Because time travel is exhausting. And if we go in the past, we get kind of bummed out and a little bit depressed. I mean, there's also the highlights, right? But the highlights usually are used in comparison of what's going on right now. And then the future, that just causes anxiety. So when we're more in the present, then we're able to see the significance of every moment and knowing that each is fleeting. And the fourth noble truth is the middle road. The middle road is the Eightfold Path, which is the seed for the Eight-Limb Path, which is what we practice in yoga. So this was all caused by the fact that Siddhartha was like, I don't like the fact that everyone dies and suffers. I want to find something that offers people release. And so he went from being this prince with no wants and desires to throwing off all his clothing, dressing in the rags of executed convicts, right? And then going out onto this, going into abject poverty and just trying to learn awareness through that. And what he found was where true happiness resides isn't in, you can be happy and wealthy, and you can be poor and, you can be rich and happy, and you can be poor and happy. But what he found is, it's not the denial of either of those things, it's being in the middle. That's where good things happen, equanimity and balance. So if you were born into privilege, that doesn't mean you have to denounce everything and just go sit under a tree, and if you were born in abject poverty, it doesn't mean that you have to, look up at someone privileged and be like, well, why not me? It's just somewhere we can meet all in the middle, right? And ultimately we don't want anyone to be suffering, but it's just, he went through the two extremes. So does that make sense? All right. Yeah. So this is probably the first time you're hearing this in English, or no?
English, the first
Because you've done it in Taiwanese many times, right?
Chinese, yes.
Mandarin. So the Eightfold Path is right understanding, right attitude, right speech, right action, right occupation, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So this path was developed in about the 6th BCE. So that's 300 years before Patanjali did the Yoga Sutras. So this is the seed for the Eightfold Path. So to understand what is meant by things, I mean, we can kind of get an idea of what a right understanding would be. But, it's the middle path, understanding that the person who has nothing and the person that has everything are no greater in value. They have the same value and quality. They have the same importance. The moment of celebration and the moment of devastation, both are fleeting and also have value. Right? So everything has value, but in that moment, once it's gone, everything is temporary. So, going on the middle path, good conduct, right speech, right action, right occupation, mental development, right effort, right mindfulness, right occupation. Oh, I have right occupation twice. I don't know what's supposed to be there. Right attitude, right view. That's what happens when you put it in at like midnight because you asked your husband to write it and then he got tired too. But you know what? Attachment brings suffering. I'm not attached. When I first printed it out, I had 2 third noble truths in the 4th. So, it's progress. So basically, the good conduct is like the yamas and the niyamas and asana, right? And the mental development is pratyahara and dharana. And the wisdom is dhyana and samadhi, right? So it's just the seeds of things, of where it comes from. So the idea is if you behave this way, then everything can be okay and you can reach nirvana. Nirvana doesn't have to be something that only certain castes or people can get. Because it's important to remember also, Siddhartha, or Buddha, came from the Brahmin class, and he came from a wealthy family, and there was a caste system. And the caste system basically said if you were born of a certain caste, you're going to suffer, because that's just, you were born unfortunate. Right? And so when he came around with these teachings, it was a time that basically things had started to get stale and people were just doing things out of fear. They didn't want to anger the gods more so than acts of devotion. And so that also inspired his stuff. So as we know, the 8 limbs are the yamas, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. And so this is where I want to bring into focus incorporating our yogic philosophy into stressful times. Right? Because right now it's an election year. And there are a lot of things swirling and whirling about, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your family. It does have to do with the concept of what's going to happen in the world, but ultimately, it's just a happening, and even this moment is fleeting, right? And after your birthday, that moment will have fled.
Oh, yeah. My birthday is election day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's happened one other time in my life.
So,
here 3 days later.
So see, life goes on regardless, right? And the next birthday you have, it won't be a presidential election.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, with everything going on, sometimes it's really easy to start to lose sight of everything else. Because we get caught up in that fear, right? So kind of, even if we go back in time to 6 BCE, when Siddhartha was looking for a way and an answer, it's kind of like today, right? People are looking for a way and an answer, even with like presidential elections or with politics or with healing modalities or with education. Like, things are kind of mixed up and stale right now. Like, things that worked in the past aren't working now. If, one of my friends who is part of the art organization in LA, she was saying that for one of their positions, for an usher position, they required a master's in art for an usher for a show. yeah, because everything's kind of, stuck right now. But then also the person that's the head of our organization has no college education but has a connection to the art world, right? And that's the way it used to be, but now things are a little different, a little topsy-turvy. And when things are different and topsy-turvy, it's easy to lose sight of things and get really caught up in the minutiae of things. Because ultimately, even though that's what they said they wanted, if they had met a person that didn't have a master's but knew someone, right, they would probably be welcomed in. But ultimately, right now, these are uncertain times. And in uncertain times, it's easy to get caught up and anxious. And then, there's everything else, right? There's work. There's getting married. There's preteen daughters. There's graduating sons. There's working really far away, right? There's like all this stuff topped onto, onto our ice cream sundae of events in life. And then there's like what's going on in Haiti and what's going on in Syria. There's, it's just this bombardment of things. And there's a lot of unfortunate and unhappy things happening right now. But the whole idea behind this is that no matter what's going on, you're still okay. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, a psychologist and psychiatrist, said the only thing you can't take away from a man is his perspective. Right? And when he was in a camp, he would like look out a window and imagine a tree, and that tree represented hope. So it doesn't get much worse, than being, in a situation like that. So it's important that even though everything feels life and death sometimes, it's really not, right? It's just your nervous system reacting. There are no saber-toothed tigers, there are no T-Rexes. If you forget to press send on your bill pay, it might result in a late fee, which would really stink, but ultimately it's not the end of the world if you pay an extra $25, right? But when you don't press send and you get charged that extra $25 and then you realize, oh, I didn't do it, and then you carry that with you for like 2 weeks, that does have a cost, right? That has a cost that you can't get back. You can always make more money, right? And we have this constant fear in society that we don't have enough, that we have to acquire more, that we need more, we have to have the big house, we have to have the right car, we have to have the right children. And ultimately, there's not a right and a wrong, There's no right way to be human. Because if it wasn't right, you wouldn't be alive. Right? So there's no right way to have a human body. But we have opinions about that, right? So back to the yamas, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So ahimsa is nonviolence. And I'm just going to use Facebook for an example here. Because, people are always posting really loving stuff about opponents or about a variety of opinions because everybody has an opinion. So your cousin, we'll just go with cousin, has a very strong opinion about the candidate or a policy that you're not a fan of, right? So we're just going to keep it free of political ideology, but you know what you believe in. And you probably know a person like this. And they're typing in all caps, right? Like, can you believe that? Do you know what this means to blah? And oh my God, it's Armageddon. It's not. Sometimes, that's the reaction, right? So ahimsa, how would you practice ahimsa in that situation? Unfollow their feed, right? Non-violence. So that's how you practice ahimsa for yourself. How can you practice ahimsa with that person, right? Not choosing not to, right? Like, hey, you're the biggest idiot ever. I can't believe we share, like, you're so sometimes, like, well, with my dad, he and I are very opinionated, and I'm like, we're not going to agree on this, so let's just not have this conversation, because we're not going to get anywhere. You know, sometimes it's good to talk to people who have differing views than you, but when someone's had those views for 74 years, and you've had your views for 30-some-odd years, you know, they're going to win. They're not going to win you over, but you're just going to, like, not going to be able to sway them. If people have a seed of interest, then they can be swayed, but it requires relationship, and I don't think there's, I mean, being a father and daughter is a pretty close relationship, and we haven't changed yet, so, yeah. And then Satya, which is truthfulness. So Satya, people often mistake their opinion for truthfulness. Truthfulness and opinion are two different things, right? And you'll hear people say, well, speak your truth. But you have to still pause and say, is this my truth or is this my opinion? You know, because your cousin thinking that whatever candidate is the best in sliced bread, that's their opinion. Is that the truth? Well, it doesn't seem like the truth to you, right? That's your opinion. You know, the truth may be, in that situation, the truth isn't really going to come out until whoever's elected and you see what happens, right? And your truth in that situation may be like, I want, well, both people's truths are going to be like, I want the most safe government for my family. I mean, everyone's coming from the same good place. It just might not seem like it because all those caps and, you know, that completely wrong opinion. You know? But so your truth, you know, what is your truth? Maybe you're a passive person. Maybe, you know, or maybe you're a very conservative person and you know, so, or maybe you're really into war, you know? Like I doubt you guys are, but, you know, who knows? What's his name, Boehner? He's a yogi. He's Speaker of the House. Voted for war and stuff, so you know what happens. Yeah. Yeah, he said yeah. Pause. Yeah. But you know what? Maybe he embraces his truth, right? Is that he is the way he is, and he has no problem with it.
Maybe he's a gym, you know.
So, and then the next thing would be asteya, right? Non-stealing. And so you have this opinionated cousin, and how you could not steal from yourself is not allow that person's opinion to carry with you throughout the day, because it's their opinion. And also not being, you know, not attacking them and saying, like, you are the most stupid person I've ever been related to. I don't know, you know. And then brahmacharya, which is conservation of energy. And with aesthetics, it's about celibacy, but that doesn't really work for a lot of people, especially people in marriages or committed relationships. Right? But the way we can apply brahmacharya to this Facebook situation is, once again, just not follow their feet until after November 8th. And when they do say something, not carrying that with you and making it yours. We often have this ability to pack suitcases with other people's stuff, you know? And what I mean by that is their emotions, their emotional baggage, when it's not ours. But for some reason, we just feel like, oh, that fits in there nicely. And then it just becomes really exhausting. And a parigraha, non-grasping attachment, right? It doesn't matter who you want to win. It doesn't matter, because whoever wins, wins, right? And that's really based on the electoral college. You know, like, so even the popular vote in the electoral college can differ. It's happened like twice in history, I believe. But a parigraha, non-grasping attachment, whatever happens, happens. And, you know, maybe your cousin gloats for a couple of weeks afterwards, you know, you can still not follow their feed. So there's just kind of an idea of how you can incorporate the yamas into your life through Facebook, but other ways too, like office connections and whatnot. So going on to the niyamas, how you can apply this in this, well, we'll just go with the election year because it's so easy. So Saucha, or Shaucha, Sanskrit is not my second language. You know how some people will learn a language and then for their whole entire lives they can't kick their accent? This is me in Sanskrit.
Have you studied Nikolai Bachman?
No.
It is his language, and it's really articulate, but I recommend that maybe you check out, like, he's helpful.
Yeah. I've done I've done recordings and it just comes out, you know, like a Texan speaking Spanish, you know, like, which sounds cool to me, but, you know, it doesn't sound like someone who would speak from South America, right? You know? But yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah. And maybe I'll visit, or maybe I won't.
Yeah, he's helpful, he's good.
I still can't spell the word awkward, you know, so there's some things that are just,
Exactly.
I have to practice them harder and just let go. So Shaucha is a cleanliness, right? Like, once again, we'll just go with social media because it's so relative. Or even like text messages, or, you know, we're constantly in contact. We have emails. People send email chains, right? Like some people still do. So the way you can approach it is, you know, not opening an email that says, you know, that's from your colleague, that says, I can't believe so-and-so did this now, right? Like, delete, you know, unfollowing, not responding, right? Like, not fueling that animosity. You know, if you can have a respectful conversation, that's one thing, but sometimes people are so caught up in their opinion and thinking their opinion is the truth that there is no middle ground. But what science has found is, like social psychology has found, is when people create relationships and they can create change because then they know someone like that, right? But we have these ideas, these cultural ideas about certain people the way they are, right? And that doesn't, like if I say think Republicans, think Democrat, think Green Party, think, you know, Libertarian, there's probably some type of image or idea that pops up, you know, no matter how you identify. Because we have identifications and association. But if you met someone who had a differing point of view, but they approached you with respect and consideration, and hey, I just don't understand, right? Because, like, for example, Elva and I have had lots of conversations, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, lots of cultural conversations. Like, she'll ask me questions, I'll ask her questions, because we have very different cultural experiences. And so, there's not a right or a wrong way, right? But, like, in Taiwan, there's a certain way to behave. In the United States, there's a certain way that's the norm to behave, you know? And what's kind of interesting is here, everyone can be American, right? But in most of Asia, if you are a citizen, you're also that ethnicity, you know? It's just kind of interesting, right? So there's like cultural and ethnic versus here, people are not cultural, citizenship and ethnic, versus here, as a citizen, you get the nationality, right? So it's just kind of interesting, right? And then through communication, we create a connection, and we can just talk, right? And that can come up with anything. It can come up with politics. I've had great conversations with people who believe differently than me, just because it's like, well, what does that mean to you, right? Because what things mean are different from person to person. Santosha, right? Like, contentment. Contented optimism, knowing that you're enough as you are. Doesn't matter if you're a candidate or if you're abstaining or whatever. Whatever happens, happens. You're enough as you are. Like, there's nothing that can change the character of you, right, except you. Things can change your reputation. You have no control of your reputation, but your character you have control of. You can be within your character. Tapas, right? So you want to have that consistent energy, that consistent passion. Maybe you're impassioned by politics, and you really just want to be a part of that. Well, how can you be a part of that in a productive way, right? Like, flaming your cousin is not productive, right? Or going to different websites or different blogs or different Facebook places and just flaming people isn't going to get your communication across, right? If you really feel strongly about what it is that you want to do and what your objective is, then practicing the yamas while you're engaging with someone else and communicating with them in a respectful, non-violent, and truthful manner. And then, don't throw so much energy at them that you wind up depleted and tired. If the conversation's going nowhere, right? Like, may peace be with you. Love and light, whatever you want to say. Go so-and-so. And Svadhyaya, right, the self-study. Like, what is all of this that's going on right now? Why is it affecting me so much? Maybe it's not, but that can be applied to any situation. When something pops up, why is it affecting me so much? Why is it hurting so bad? Why is it causing me to suffer? Or even, why does this light me up so much? It doesn't have to be all gloom and doom. And the thing is insults only hurt if a part of you believes them, right? Like, a really common insult is calling someone fat. And for whatever reason, in the United States, that's like the worst thing you can be, You can be a mass murderer as long as you're not a fat mass murderer. But it's just like a type of body, right? Like, there's tall, there's short. It's just a descriptive. We make it a pejorative in our culture. But if someone doesn't believe that they are, or believes that it's just a description, if someone's like, oh, you're fat, then the person's like, okay, yeah, I am. Or, no, I'm not, because there's certain things that if they don't fall within your own self-doubt, then they don't ignite that fire of insecurity, right? And that's just the most common one I could come up with, because the other day I was in some type of interaction and that kind of came up directed at someone else, and it wasn't even fitting, and my husband was just like, what? And I was like, it's just the easiest thing people can dig out, like, it's like the #1 American insult, like, okay, did that one stick? And then, so just when things do affect you, figuring out why are they affecting me, and just sit with yourself, or maybe study more. Like, I don't understand why my cousin believes this way, but, I know my cousin isn't a big jerk-off, I know my cousin's a really nice person, so why do they believe so differently? And maybe through reading something, you can go, oh, I can see their point of view. I still don't agree with them, I still think they're wrong, but, I can see their point of view, and now I'm not going to write all in caps in my text message to them that they should just, do whatever. And then Ishvari Pranadhana, right? And it goes back to, like, a parigraha. Ishvari Pranadhana. Release to a higher power. Release the fact that you have release the fact that you have no control. And here in the United States, people don't like to have the idea that we have no control. We really like the illusion of control. And when Buddha was talking about our reality being an illusion, he wasn't saying real life is an illusion. This is very real. What he's saying is our perceptions, the way that we're processing things, that's an illusion, because we're taking all of our identifications, all of our associations, all of those grasping moments of the past and putting them here and then reading into it, right? So, in like the 12-step programs, the first thing is to release to higher power. And a lot of different philosophies or religion, it's okay to release to a higher power, right? But like culturally, once again, like release to a higher power, like the Electoral College, right? Which would be the case with the presidential election. But whatever happens, happens. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect who you are, right? Like, it may affect the decisions that you make, but it's not going to change the core of your being. You're still going to be you. It's not like if the person that you don't want elected gets elected, then all of a sudden you're like, I'm Gina, and bleach your hair blonde, and then, drop the RE, and just move to, like, Canada, because everyone thinks that's so easy. It's It's really hard to be an expat.
Really hard to
And they don't want
Many
us.
of no, they are.
But it's not going to change, right? And even if you did move to Canada, you would still have all those associations and identifications of growing up here. And even if you moved to Canada, right, you'd still have all the identifications and associations of the two cultures that one growing up in and the other one becoming an adult in, right? Like, you would still have all of this stuff with you. So just don't move to Canada. I guess that's probably the Dharma Talk. I think that we covered the yamas and the niyamas and how we can apply those to the times right now. And asana, a lot of times when we're getting overwhelmed and we're just getting caught up in everything that's going on, we're in this constant news cycle. Like, even if you don't read the news, someone's going to text you something, right? Or you're going to be at the gas station and there's a television there. Or you're walking through the mall and there's televisions there. There's this constant feed of media. And that can lead to a sense of overwhelm. When we're overwhelmed, we tend not to be in our bodies. And when we tend to not be in our bodies, we tend to float off into space. And most of the times when we float off into space, we're not going to, like, really happy places. I mean, some people do. Some people float off to, like, Candyland and Gumdrop Alley and whatever, and unicorns and rainbows. But a lot of times most of the time though, when we get overwhelmed, we go to, hang out with the Sith Lords and earthquakes and sinkholes and what was I going to say? Audits and, like all of these things. It's not like, I'm stressed. Oh, gumdrops. I love when I'm stressed because I just go to this magnificent, wonderful place. It's not the reality for most of us. So practicing asana, even if it's just, a sun salutation in your chair at work, have sun salutation standing. Let's say you don't have the space to do a full sun salutation. Just moving and getting back into your body can help bring you back to the present and help bring you back to that middle path, right? Because when we go off into space or time travel, where's our body? Maybe you fell down a YouTube hole, or maybe, and it's feeding whatever ideas, whatever your opinion is, or maybe going completely against it, so you're suffering, right? And then you don't realize you've been there for like 3 hours until your body's completely sore, and you're like, why does my hip hurt?
Your class yesterday.
Yeah.
Once we just started moving, you were there, were you, yesterday morning? And when I started moving, it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe how stiff I am. Because I was just here on Tuesday, you know what I mean? I'm sorry.
No.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like the Tin Man,
Yeah.
We were having this flow, and my body was like, creak, creak.
And also we get really stuck in our rigidness, right? So even if, it's only been Tuesday, if you've just been moving a certain way between Tuesday and Thursday, then like our body's starting to stiffen up a little bit. So yeah, do some asana, do some pranayama, the lion's breath, my favorite, works your core, so that helps you get rid of stress. You're on the 405, someone cuts you off, what you gonna do? Don't flip the bird, do some pranayama. Or just something as simple as Ujjayi breath, right? You could channel Darth Vader if you like. You could imagine sounding like a seashell, the seashore, whatever you like. And then we get to the part of wisdom, right? So wisdom, and pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, but that's going into the wisdom category, which would be part of the Eightfold Path that I was speaking about at the beginning. So pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. Pratyahara is not something that we can force. It's not something like, I'm just going to ignore you guys now. You don't exist, Pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and Dharana and dhyana pretty much go together. It's not like it has to be pratyahara, then dharana, then dhyana. Well, pratyahara and dharana. Pratyahara can happen in dhyana. So pratyahara is the withdrawal of the senses. Dharana is creating a single focus. Dhyana is meditation. So pratyahara is something that happens naturally when you get really absorbed into, I remember your story, so I'm not going to tell that one. When you get really absorbed, when I talked about pratyahara before, just being natural, you said it disrupted your sleep.
Oh yeah.
When you go to sleep at night, pratyahara just naturally happens. So it's something that naturally happens. It can spontaneously happen, like when you're working on something or watching a movie or doing something that you enjoy and everything else just fades into the background. That can be pratyahara. That's why I was going to go to sleep.
You know that really sweet spot when you realize that you're falling asleep and then you go there? But when she was teaching this over the summer, I was in that sweet spot and I was like, this is pratyahara. Little voice in my head. I'm like, this is not pratyahara, voice in my head. I'm awake now. Now my senses were back.
But I'm sure there was something else you were doing that you had pratyahara and you weren't even aware of.
Oh yeah.
Like you're doing something, your phone rings, you don't even hear it, even though the ringer's on. Your kid's standing next to you, you're cooking, you're making a cake, you don't even notice, right? There's like this, did the cricket move?
Yeah, I get accused of that from my kids all the time. They're like, I told you.
Yeah, so it just happens. So dharana is the focus and dhyana is meditation. So pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, and dhyana can be practiced together. You could be doing ujjayi breath, having your eyes closed, and focusing on the breath, so that would be practicing dharana. And then that just leads to pratyahara, because now you're just focused on your breath, and then that leads to dhyana, which is meditation. And then that place where you just go and you're not quite sure where you went, but you open your eyes and feel refreshed, right? That's samadhi. That's nirvana. That's where the good stuff is. Sometimes people say my voice goes in meditation. That's awesome. Because that means you move beyond your conscious mind. And so your critical mind's not holding on to every word. You know, when we're having a conversation, your mind's like, okay, what's happening? Okay, I'm going to remember that for later. I'm going to remember that for later. But when you go really deep into meditation and you're really practicing pratyahara, you're going inward, and that actually increases your cognitive functioning and your overall health. So if you ever don't hear meditation go really deep, just know you're rocketing. You're in samadhi.
So I'm thinking, that's kind of rude, but I wasn't paying attention.
And sometimes what happens is when people go into deep meditation, they'll even sound like they're sleeping, and they're not. It's just that's what their body associates with that level of depth. And so they can hear everything or they can hear nothing. You know, it just depends on the person, but it's not wrong. Yeah. Well, what the Dalai Lama says, the best meditation is sleep. So, yeah. So, any questions? Meditation. I feel like we covered a lot in a little time. My husband's like, is that a 3-hour workshop? I said, no, it's an hour. He's like, really? Okay. I was like, most of them already know it, so so we'll just go through it quick. So my point in doing this isn't to sway everyone over to my opinion and the way I view the world, but to encourage curiosity. Because I think with teaching, and I know as a student, when someone brings up an interesting concept or idea, then I want to find out more about it, right? So this is to encourage, sadhyaya, self-study, like, what does this mean to me? Like, does it mean anything to me? Can I just let it go, right? So, it's not that I'm the end-all, be-all. As I said, I know I'm horrible at Sanskrit, so, best to be finding someone else who's more versed in it if you want to get really good at it. But I'm not attached to it, right? I've been practicing for 12 years and my accent's still there. So, yeah. How did I
always become like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then you remind yourself and place it into a daily life. And once the daily life is kind of like give you too much, you kind of like drowning into the reality and not jumping out and to see this again.
Well, I know that you grew up with Buddhism, so you know far more than I probably could absorb. But so I want to make sure that it made sense. It's the first time you've heard it in English, but you've heard it your whole entire life. So yeah, so that's it. That's my visual aids. You want to meditate? Y'all came here for meditation, I know. So if you like, you can either sit, or if you want, you can lay your blanket out and lay down. Just find whatever comfort best suits you.
I got all this in my yoga teacher training, and I'm not sure that either I don't remember or I wasn't paying attention, but I'm not sure that I learned that the 8-limb path was born of the 4 Noble Truths.
Yeah, most trainings don't cover that.
I'm pretty sure, I could go back and look at my notes because it was kind of thorough like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I made that connection, so it's cool to just have a new layer of it, a new way to kind of put it all together.
Yeah, well, there's so much to learn in your 200-hour training.
Yeah.
It's like, where do I start, and where does it end? Because just covering the 8 limbs is intense, without putting another 8-fold path on top of that, and 4 noble truths on top of that. Another blanket? So there's something like, when you read something or study something, you only maintain about 19% of it. So there's a lot of things to learn and study in the world. So let's just first practice focusing on our breath. Allowing our breath to be very deep and releasing. Inhaling through the nose and exhale, sigh. And just allow your body to become a radiant being of sensation. Allowing your body to take the awareness from the outside to the inside. Feeling any areas in which there might feel these tension or stiffness. And just noticing, being the witness of the sensation. And if you found tension or stiffness, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional, just imagine breathing in to that area, inhaling compassion, and exhaling release. Inhaling compassion, and exhaling and release. And just take a moment, connect to something in your life feels a little stuck. that feels a little sticky, maybe a little bit icky. Something that you would like to let go of or have morph or change. And then create a visual or sensation for that thing, whatever it may be. Allow it to take some type of shape, maybe an animated object, maybe a human, maybe an animal, maybe something completely different. Just allow that thing that seems like it's a little bit stuck, it's a little sticky and icky, and you'd like to release it. Just allow it to have a visual or sensation, manifestation for you right now. And first, let's approach it with ahimsa, non-violence, compassion. Allowing it to fall into the category of neither good nor bad, but just something that is. And then welcoming satya, truthfulness, from a place of neutrality, from a place of equanimity. Can you see the purpose of this thing? And are you ready to let it go? And once you've chosen to allow it to stay or let it go completely, now it's time to practice asteya, non-stealing. Allowing whatever that thing was that's now morphed and changed into something that's neutral and just is. Thanking it for showing you the way. But giving yourself permission to no longer allow it to rob you of your happiness, contentment, or however it may else affect you. And that you're practicing brahmacharya. You're letting go of throwing energy at this thing that no longer serves, at this thing that in the past was unpleasant. You're ready to save your prana for other areas of your life that need your attention and energy. And the parigraha, releasing and letting go of any of the old stories that were associated with this. Stories no longer have a hold on you. You've now practiced sausha and cleaned out the space that that thing once took up. And practicing santosha, knowing that you are enough, that that thing does not devalue you, that that thing is just a thing, and you are as you are, good enough and whole. Allowing your tapas to be balanced, nourishing yourself, taking time for yourself, breathing, practicing, being, creating consistency. And then practicing Svadhyaya, just taking a moment of reflection, noticing the sensations in your body. And now practicing Ishvari Pranadhana, release all of those things to a higher power. Whether that's the universe, physics, God, gods, goddesses, or something completely else. Just giving yourself permission to release that neutral thing that's just a thing. Knowing that you'll operate within your character, that you will do what you need to do, how you need to do it, when the moment arises, and knowing that you are always enough. And bringing your attention back to your breath. Imagine breathing in a bright, healing light, filled with unconditional positive regard and love. And allowing that light to take you to a place of equanimity and balance as you exhale anything that's no longer needed. And with each inhale, that light gets brighter, more vibrant, more loving, more generous, more kind. And every exhale, you find yourself at the end of the exhale feeling more balanced, secure, you are complete, you are whole, you are, and always will be, enough. Wiggling your fingers and your toes, rotating your wrists and your ankles, inhaling your arms overhead, and exhaling a sigh. And then rolling onto your side. And gently making your way up to a seated position at your own pace. And bringing your hands to your heart again. Now the cricket's with you. It's a very loving cricket. Inhaling. And exhaling. Let's close our practice out with 3 ohms. Inhale. Om.